I'm just driving my mouse around so I can say yes. Great. Hi, everyone. It's good to see all of you. I don't know how many folks usually come to these meetings, but I think we'll just go ahead and get started. And I added a few things to the agenda today that I'll just tell you that they're there. And some of them will need some decisions soon. But I know mostly we want to spend our time, you all giving your legislative updates. So, and you don't have any network updates to share, Shin? I saw you did that first last time. If you don't, that's fine. We can just go ahead. Oh, and the agenda. Shin is always faster than me, but maybe between Eric and Shin, we could get it into the chat. I'm driving over here.
Eric, you got this. Sorry, today I'm a little discombobulated.
No, it's okay. I got it. Oh, wow. I got to do it. I'm always slowest, but I did it this time. So there's the agenda. Hi, who's there is E. That's intriguing.
That's kind of important.
Eric is on the computer.
Okay, great.
I was like, who is that?
Good to know who's here.
Yes. Okay, great. Well, I said I would come help move us through the agendas. It should be pretty easy given how few people we have today, but I assume that is just a reflection of where we're at in the legislative process. Eric and I actually just spent a little time going over the overall plan for this working group and our timing and some next steps. And I shared here in the agenda that, as you all know, that April 4th was the big cut date. If you hadn't gotten into the other house, you were out of luck. Although Eric and I were just going through OLIS for a few bills, and it was like, we're not really sure how to interpret that. So it may not be that clear cut. But anyway, there's a lot of things out of the way, it sounds like, even though some things might jump back in somehow. The legislative session was scheduled to end on June 25th. If anyone has heard it differently, let me know. And I just wanted to bring up a note that before we started out this session, like way back when we were preparing, we thought, oh, maybe closer to the end, we might want to have a meeting focused more on budget advocacy. And I just wanted to bring that up in case that was still something folks wanted to do, but that may be happening already, and we don't need to have a discussion here. So just put that in your back brain and think about it. And then I believe this came up at your last meeting, but we do want to have a mini convening in July where we can reflect on what happened during the session, what happened to the bills we watched, what are the next steps in terms of some of the issues that got left on the table, what are the next steps in terms of what might go into rulemaking and agency decision making that we need to track, and then also what were the tools we used to do this work together, and what's our next improvement on them. And Eric's already been thinking of some things around that. So yeah, exactly, constitutionally mandated. I guess I was just wondering if they were aiming for a week earlier for some reason, because I know they are allowed to end earlier if they can, but it's hard to imagine. So does anyone have anything to say about any of that before I move to the next piece?
I do. This is Megan. We have a lot of us are working on budget asks, and I think we were thinking we might have like some guidance on budget advocacy, and I know that some people on the committee were in this group were interested in that. We're now all doing it, as you said, and so I feel like maybe what we could do will be when we're giving. I feel like it might be more effective to share what we know about the budget advocacy, advocating for budget items, like just go ahead and share a little bit more information than we might, not just like where our bills are, but what we've learned about how to navigate that process, and maybe share it more organically this month and next month, rather than having a special focus where we might not have the opportunity to hear so many updates. So there will be a way to do both.
I'm happy for that. That sounds great. And I think, you know, we didn't say that when we sent out the announcement because we weren't sure about that, but I think maybe folks have that on their mind right now and they can focus on budget, but we could definitely put the word out that at the next meeting. Now, so think about when the next meeting is that good timing? Okay.
It's perfect timing, although people kind of need to have those tools before then. So sharing today as we can, and then next month would be like, how's it working for us? What are we actually doing?
And let me ask that sounds perfect. And then sometimes in you know, eons past, people were able to actually discuss things by email, but I don't get the sense that you can really have a discussion by email anymore because there's so much of it. So really saving the conversation. I'm just trying to think if there's anything between now and the next meeting, like if someone's working on it and has some great aha moment, is there some way that we can help facilitate more sharing, or do we just say what we got today and then we'll see what we get next time and that's all we got? And that's totally fine. Just asking if there's anything else we can do to support that sharing.
Maybe like a hand raise at one point in this meeting, like who's working on a budget ask? I think we probably all have budget. I think our bills probably all have some fiscal impact, but that could be helpful to know who else. I don't know who else is doing this.
Well, let's jump right into that right after actually that I covered the racial equity legislation piece. I think that's a great idea. And also you're making me think, oh, right, there are two things. One is I've got a bill and there's a fiscal part of it. The other one is I have something out there in the ether that might get stuck into the Christmas tree bill or show up in an agency budget, and that one is less obvious than money that goes with the bill. So good idea.
We'll bring up, since we're talking about budget, I'm thinking about budget in a different lens, more specifically for supporting this particular working group. And I don't know if this is the right time or if we have to talk about, or if this should be a different conversation. But what I'm wondering is, I'm starting to hear from a number of different other working groups, including the VeggieRx group, as well as the DI committee. And as we're starting to gain more momentum in the things that we as a network are involved in, I'm hearing a lot more asks for dedicated working group coordinator time, kind of like an Andrew, for a lot of these separate work streams, because to be able to give some of this work full attention, it really does require someone that is a little bit more focused.
Yeah, and let me just say that is a great, totally different conversation, because the budget advocacy we're talking about is the public money, but an important thing to think about. I don't know if it's today, but let's figure out how we have that convo and like what we would need to ask the policy committee. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, so we have a plan to talk about budget and how we advocate for our budgets in a second. I just want to note that, Shin, I guess we'll need to work with you on finding some possible dates for a July mini convening that would be for the full network, you know, the follow-up policy mini convening on what the heck happened. And I want to just get with this group on, if the session ends on June 25th, which is a Sunday, how soon, you know, and then we've got the next weekend is probably being treated as 4th of July weekend. Is it too soon to aim for like the end of the week of the 3rd? Do we really need like sometime the week of the 10th? It takes a while to figure out what the heck happened because the Christmas tree bill could be so opaque. So what do you think, Megan? And what do you think, Amy or Mackenzie or Aaron? Like, the week of July 10th.
Just because the week of July 3rd is a kind of like, there will be a holiday in that week. And there's also just like the recovery factor.
That's right.
So I would go for the 10th or 11th or 12th, but
Great. Okay.
just my opinion.
The recovery factor is not to be sneezed at. Thank you, Mackenzie. Amy,
Yeah.
what do you think?
I would agree, just definitely to have time to go through the Christmas tree bill. I mean, you can do, control search, but it's a lengthy document usually.
Yep. And you can read it 3 times and not know exactly what you saw there. Great. You know how they have those meetings or the gatherings where people read James Joyce's Ulysses all like in a whole giant thing? I mean, I think probably people have tried to read the Christmas tree bill all as a whole thing, like with performance art. Ugh.
So I want to make sure I
So,
get that
go
right.
ahead.
I'm looking at let's say the week of the 17th or the 24th.
10th.
The
10.
10th.
Mhm.
Okay. Right now, there's nothing on the calendar for really that week network wide. So is there a day of the week that works better for folks?
We have gone for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays in the morning block.
Yeah.
So we don't have to hash this all out unless someone has a strong issue with it, but I think we have such a small group here. Okay, Andrew would request Thursday. I think we should do some sort of scheduling of our CFS at the working group.
Yeah.
Working group and just ask for some preferences and then go with the best one. Okay. It was 3 days or whatever. Shin and Eric and I, we can work on that together. Okay. Great. Okay, let's move into the racial equity related legislation piece. I want to start out by saying that this didn't happen the way that I had hoped it would happen, and that is entirely because I wasn't here and I take full responsibility. This is not a blaming thing or anyone's fault. It's that I had a vision for how we would do this, and I may have explained it to Eric, but how did Eric know how to implement it? It was building on what we've done in the past, where we have really looked out to see what are these social equity and also specifically racial equity and justice oriented pieces of legislation that are out there being considered by the legislature, that it would help us to know about and think about how is this related to our work? And if I needed to explain this to my constituency, how would I show it? And we've even had workshops about that a couple sessions ago. So when I got back and I got caught up and I was like, oh, where are those things? And Eric did jump in and look for what were the legislative priorities of these specific organizations. I can explain how we came up with that list, but we had a long list that Charlotte Epps came up with a couple of years ago. And then there's groups that are working at the legislature and aren't, but that was a great place to start. And we do get Picun's bills because Picun interacts with us, although we just got that one that Ira talked about last time and added it. So Eric put all of those into that 4th tab of the matrix. And only 2 of those, the mental health for agricultural workers and food for all Oregonians, made it to bills to watch. And I thought, oh, is there something about the selection process when we go from matrix to bills to watch? But anyway, all of this is helping me think about how do we do this work in a way that doesn't just seem like more overwhelm, where we could at certain times in our process together as a working group sort of stop, take a reading. What's the big picture of what is going to happen at the legislature or what is happening at the legislature from these organizations and their constituencies around justice issues? And we can think about, is there a way as a working group or a way as organizations that somehow those priorities could be connected with ours? But that's not something we can do on the fly. And so it's important for this committee, for us to create space for it, like we did 2 years ago. So I just wanted to acknowledge that this really has me thinking about how we can do this more effectively, what's meaningful, and then I'm happy to have a conversation about it, but I also do not want to take away from your time doing the actual legislative updates today. Does anyone have any thoughts on that at this moment? You don't have to. Okay.
Lauren, I just want to acknowledge that I think it's really great to make sure to keep that framing in mind. And it's really hard with like limited bandwidth to track just, let's say ag and natural resources bills, let alone a third big topic. But it is so important to keep that mindset. And I think that a lot of us work in food systems work because we know that there's so much environmental injustice in environmental food policy. And, that's where I kind of can sleep at night knowing that I might not be showing up for like every single racial justice bill because I put so much into changing a food system, which has a lot of inherent inequities in it. So, just want to honor you for really still wanting to frame things like that. And I think I'm happy to do what I can when I have the bandwidth.
Yep, absolutely. And I think, thank you for that and framing it that way, because that is one of the reasons we have a network and why we have folks who who can bring this up, who can give us the material, who can help walk us through the process. That's the kind of thing that we can do as a network that folks can't do on their own necessarily. And I think we might have a lot of members out there who will know about these bills from one way or another, but how we have that conversation about policy in general. So I'll stop there. This is me at the like 30,000 foot view of how we do this, but let's come down to your legislative updates. And if you want to start with, just as you go around, just bring up any budget related things you're working on. So who wants to start?
I can start. I'm also noticing that we have 3 staff and 1 leadership team member, and we have kind of half of us are members and half of us are staff or leadership. So we don't have the best turnout of advocates here today. But thanks staff and everyone for being here to give these updates. I'll go ahead and start. Oregon Climate and Ag Network has 2 priority bills and a 3rd priority policy. Our 2 priority bills are the Healthy Soils Bill and the Natural Climate Solutions Bill. The Healthy Soils Bill is House Bill 2998. We're shepherding that bill. I'll start with that one. That bill moved out of its policy committee with unanimous support in, I don't have my dates here, before the deadline, And that was a big, heavy lift to get the bill amended in a way that would address industry's concerns and reduce the fiscal impact of the bill. So streamline the bill from a $4 million ask to a $2 million ask. I think I gave updates about that last time. And it passed with unanimous support, so that is great. It's on to the Ways and Means Committee, so now it's a budget ask. It's sitting there. My understanding, there's so much to say about the budget process right now, so I'll just do that because we're gonna have a little focus there. So now the Ways and Means Committee is navigating the budget process, and they're getting feedback from legislative members, and they've asked every legislator to submit their 3 priority funding requests by April 18th. So that was Tuesday. Every legislator did that. And then they're simultaneously getting feedback from the public through a Ways and Means Roadshow. So there's these hearings around the state where people can testify on the state budget. There was one in Newport last week. There was one in Portland a couple weeks ago. There's one in Roseburg tomorrow. And then there's one and the only people who are from those regions who are there in person can attend, but there are about 200 people at every hearing and everyone's not getting to speak. So it's, and then there's a fourth one or a fifth hearing that's statewide virtual on May 4th at Salem, but I don't even know if they're letting people talk in person. It's just opportunity for those people who didn't have a place to speak at the others. And then simultaneously, the Ways and Means co-chairs, who are the budget makers, have asked every committee chair to submit their funding priorities. And so each of the committee co-chairs for every committee in the legislature is submitting their budget priorities as well. And then simultaneously, different campaigns are doing kind of legislator sign-ons where legislators can just say, hey, I didn't put it on my priority list, but I support this bill. And then there's caucus priorities where the Dems and the Rs are submitting their priorities. So basically everyone from every potential direction is weighing in on the budget. And the Ways and Means will have to sort out that. And there's really, the budget is super tight. So I'm seeing most of us are lobbyists here. So Aaron's not, but just, I don't probably need to go too far into all that stuff. But that is, there was one other piece about that I wanted to share. So Ways and Means, just that the budget's really tight. That my understanding, and then we have that my understanding is that if all the agency budgets are funded at the level that kind of they're planned right now, there's not much left at all for policy bills or any other funding requests that aren't in a state agency budget. And so things are very tight, but then simultaneously we're also waiting for the May revenue forecast, final revenue forecast, at which point the amount of money we're dealing with become more clear, and that amount could either shrink or expand. And then there was one other thing related to the budget that I wanted to share. Just that some of us are kind of trying to work all of those avenues, like we're advocating at all of those levels with our legislators, with the chairs, with the hearings, but then also we're trying to navigate the fact that some policies, that maybe state agency budgets will be funded, but policy bills won't. Or maybe, so some of us are putting our requests in multiple places. So you'll see that OAHP, Ag Heritage Program, has a bill, 3366. It also has an ask in the OWEB agency budget, which wasn't in the governor's recommended budget, but now I just finished testifying in support of that. And I saw a bunch of members were there just a few minutes ago saying fund OAHP in the agency budget. And then there's a third, and then the co-chairs of the Ag Committee are also like saying prioritize OAHP. So there's a bunch of, and then the Healthy Soils bill is kind of being folded into OHP in some places, along with different requests. So there's a lot of different ways to slice the cake or whatever. And that was a total aside to the Healthy Soils bill update. So Healthy Soils bill has got a bill, House Bill 298, that's sitting waiting for funding in Ways and Means without a lot of, like, it's not a high priority for legislators. It's a very small ask and kind of low priority, even though everybody likes it. And then we also are included in the drought package. The Healthy Soils bill language is included in the drought package, which is a huge ask. I think it's like it's over $100 million total right now. That'll have to be scaled way back. And then just to finish my update, the Natural Climate Solutions bill is, the Natural Climate Solutions bill is ORCAN's other bill. And that bill is not ORCAN's bill, but we're advocating for it. And it is in this very similar situation to Healthy Soils bill. Moved out of its committee, although that was along party lines. And it is sitting in Ways and Means. And that has a much bigger fiscal, could be something closer to 20 million. Should be much harder to find money for, but has pretty broad support from the environmental community. And then ORCAN's also advocating for the Oregon Ag Heritage Program, and that has House Bill 3366, which is its bill, and it also is, they've also got a request in through the OWEB, Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board's budget. So advocating there. That's ORCAN's update.
Megan, where would the natural climate solutions money go? Also to ODA?
There will be Natural Climate Solutions Fund that would go to Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board, I believe would be the granting entity out to any agency that wanted to request that funding. I think that's the way it's currently structured. The structure has changed a lot since the bill was introduced to the current amended version. I'm pretty sure the current amended version is that OWEB is the grant making agency. For everyone who's not aware, Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board is a state agency that basically exists to provide grants for conservation practices.
Yeah, OWEB is really good at moving money that way. They have a lot of practice, so I can see them being a good owner for this. So just noticing in some of the things that you said earlier, I mean, the idea that having to put the budget ask in various places to improve the chances of funding. And I heard folding it into an agency budget, it's being recommended by a committee chair. I mean, those are like good practices. Is that something that you needed to know about, or was that something that, you know, a committee chair, like how would you tell another advocate how to prepare for that or how to be ready for that?
I would say we're wanting to, it's kind of like, I was referring to it, kind of like diversification of crops. Like we want to have, if we have a disaster in one area or a pest problem, which is just actually totally realistic that we have pest problems in the legislature all the time.
Right. No, I understand that, but yeah. Like, how
so,
do you
I'll just
think about
finish.
it? Yeah.
I'll just finish. Yeah. So I would just say that thinking about the diversification is going to be a way to think about our health for our bills. And so if we can think about what are all the possible options, and some, if I were to outline what they would be right now, I mean, I'm just learning what they are as well. But so yeah, there's a straight up bill packet, there's a straight up bill process, and then there's thinking about if it fits within any agency budgets. And then the other, it was more of a strategy. It was like simultaneously, if we want to, this is kind of a different area, but in terms of advocacy, advocating for your bill in all the different ways that the Ways and Means Committee could receive priority requests through the public at hearings, through legislators advocating, legislators putting it on their priority list, and every year is different. This year seems to be like, I don't know that every year that the Ways and Means Committee asks every legislator for their 3 priority bills. I've never heard of that before. I don't know if it's happened in years past, or if they sometimes say, send us your 10 or send us 1, or they can do whatever they want. And sometimes, and it happened really fast this year. Like, I think usually that happens later. This real intense Ways and Means stuff has happened later in the session. My memory was 2 years ago. And I don't know why it happened like immediately after the referral deadline. They said within a week, you have to have up your priority bills to us. So all the legislators were scrambling to try to figure out, and all the advocates were scrambling to try to get to the legislators to say, put us on your list, put us on your list. So.
Got it. Thank you for that.
One quick question on that, just hopefully it's a quick answer. How does that play out for bills like the homeless spending package and the CHIPS bill? How does that play out with the budget? Is it, if that's signed by the governor, does that still go through that same process?
No, those are done. Those have made it. So now it's like, what's left? There's just not very much left after those bills that were prioritized. No, they're all allocated for, and nobody has to advocate for those anymore.
That makes sense. Okay. Just wanted to be clear on that.
I mean, they brought the total down a lot. They were really important, but just to be clear about the impact there, they brought that total down. So they've impacted the process, but they're not part of the process anymore.
Great. Thanks, Megan. Who wants to jump in? Mackenzie, Amy, Aaron?
But probably because I don't have a ton of the knowledge that Megan just shared. This is my, just full disclosure, this is my first legislative session working on a bill that has a fiscal impact. So I am learning. So it is really helpful to hear everything that folks are saying. And I know our team has a lot more knowledge in-house than I have in my brain. So I'll share what I know and kind of the main things that we've been working on. But yeah, the Food for All Oregonians bill is the main priority that we have been working on. It is currently in the Ways and Means Committee. And then last week we had a advocacy day on the Capitol, unfortunately timed when a lot of legislators were being called to the floor. So we had mostly meetings with staff. That's just how it goes. But had a really strong turnout. I will say right now, I think the thing that we've been kind of focused on is turning out individuals and written testimony to the Ways and Means Committee. So I would be curious if anyone has learnings from that. For us, it's been really hard to get anyone called on to give oral testimony at each different stop, which my understanding is that that has been true for lots of groups, just because there's been like 3 times as many folks signing up to testify as they actually have time for. But if anyone has learnings on that, would love to hear it. But I think, yeah, go for it, Megan.
I know that it makes sense and it's the right thing to do, I think, but the committee's not calling on lobbyists, basically, because they. So that's just one tip: is don't look like a lobbyist when you sign up. Send the people with your message. Send folks from the community with, and the closer to the area, you know, the closer to the site, I'm guessing they'd be more recognized as locals and needing to be heard than any of us that have access to legislators in other ways.
Yeah, we've been doing that. That's helpful feedback. We've had community members turn out from places that have been called on and just haven't been called on. So I know it's partially also the luck of the assortment, but that is helpful. And good to know. I think our priority is to get community member voices to testify rather than, staff. But thank you for flagging that, Megan. Yeah, that's been kind of the main update that I can give. I will say it has been interesting to see the lack of accessibility it's been unfortunate to see some of the lack of accessibility in some of the Ways and Means Committee stops. I know in Newport, there was a conversation about how the deaf and hard of hearing community was not given the resources to show up. And I know we've had conversations about folks that need language interpretation services. So just kind of linked to the racial equity work, Lauren, that you mentioned, just wanted to raise that up because it's something that I know we've just seen at the committee hearings.
Excellent. I mean, thank you. That's a really interesting insight. I mean, I wonder if that's something that the Oregon Racial Justice Council at the governor's level has actually thought about accessibility to the, in the policy process. Cool. Aaron says he is just listening in. Amy, what you got?
I was going to say, this is my first year seeing in sign language going on during committee hearings. So, I think it's sad that the roadshow, to me, the roadshows are always just a big hot mess, frankly. And indeed, it's just, there's not enough time and no one really listens. And it's just a big checking the box, frankly. And I think the whole advocacy process is that too, unfortunately, a lot of the time. And accessibility is kind of an afterthought. at least they're trying the best they can, but I mean, it's like none of us are happy with the way the system works, but we're kind of having to work within the system. And I'm not a lobbyist, but I have one, and you kind of need one to get stuff done. That's just kind of the sad reality. Not all stuff, but a lot of stuff. That's just my 2 cents on that. But all of the Oregon Organic Coalition's concepts are still alive. Probably our most contentious bill that's eaten up just a lot of time and stress and weekends is SB 789, which is to protect the Willamette Valley brassica specialty seed industry. And that was voted out of the Senate and is in the House Ag Committee, and probably will have a hearing the first week of May. So could definitely need as much support as possible. I was in Salem all day yesterday with an expert, bringing an expert around, and that will just be an uncomfortable partisan vote, unfortunately, because a canola grower is a Republican, and so has turned it into a really partisan bill. We had a Republican signed on at the beginning, but they had to take their name off to appease Rep. Sharp. So then we've also been doing budget advocacy from day one, and Megan already ran that down really well. One thing I would add is that a tactic that we have used in the past and are using right now is that we actually the Ways and Means subcommittees. And so I'll be testifying probably next week before the Higher Education Committee, and that goes through the Ways and Means Education sub. So that's a way that you can ideally get some more nuanced Ways and Means advocacy is through the subs. So we are advocating to expand the OSU Organic Extension Program, which helps both organic and non-organic farmers. We've grown it from 1 position to 2.2, and we did get a position in the governor's recommended budget. So we'll be flagging that. But then we're also working with the governor's office as well as Christmas tree bill and tech budget. So just as Megan said, you kind of have to just work in multiple different places. So we're hopeful that we'll be getting some more support for the organic extension program. And we also have been working on a farmer support package, which would be a state match for USDA organic cost share reimbursement, and along with an organic policy specialist at ODA. A lot of the things that ODA is doing with their soil health, et cetera, it would make sense to have organic involved in that. There's currently legislation in California right now that they're having to fix some of their healthy soils legislation because organic was excluded, and organic farmers haven't been able to be getting the same benefits. So we're definitely wanting to make sure that Oregon and Washington, through our partner organization, CORA, are trying to make sure that organic is included from the get-go. And so that bill was folded into what we call the organic omnibus bill. So the first original 2 vehicles for those aren't moving, but SB 1058 is in House rules. And so we anticipate a hearing. So that bill is still alive because it's in House rules and deadlines don't apply to rules. So there's nothing in that bill right now. The amendment has been drafted to incorporate our concepts into that bill. So that's still moving as well. So we're just, most of our energy is going to the canola fight, which again, anyone who cares about food security, brassica seed industry, vegetable production in Oregon, it's something they should pay attention to. And then we're of course doing all the other budget advocacy and have that other bill for some organic asks. We'll see, it's going to be a long session still.
Thanks, Amy. So if something is still in a rules committee, it's not dead, even if it's started in, there's another bill that is a House bill that is currently in the House Committee on Rules. And I assumed that meant it was dead. Not your bill, but another bill.
Not necessarily. Yeah. Doesn't
HB 3124 is the.
I am confused about that. And that's a really good point. And maybe, I don't know that we have anybody who can help address that. So it moved to rule. So the drought package moved to the Rules Committee in order to give it more time. But the rule is, Rules Committee doesn't have a deadline. There are a bunch of committees that are exempt from deadlines, and they're the Ways and Means Committee, the Rules Committee, Capital Construction, and some other things. But that doesn't address why the bill didn't actually pass to a different chamber. Drought package is totally still alive. That bill is still alive. And I don't understand. Amy or anybody, does anybody understand why?
Yeah,
Maybe,
I think
maybe
that's
rules
their
is
problem.
joint. Maybe rules is joint. What did you say, Amy?
I don't think so. I think there's a House rules and there's a Senate rules. So I
Let
think
me
that it just needed more time and it wasn't all the way sussed out. So they're trying to probably fix things
No, I
behind the
know.
scenes.
I know why it went. I'm following that super closely, that bill. I know
Mhm.
why it moved there, and that's exactly right. It needed more time. They didn't have it ready to move anywhere. It's a 2-sentence bill, but it moved from a House committee to a House committee. It didn't move to Senate committee.
It's still going to have to, I think, move soon, but it doesn't, it can still move from that committee and be voted out.
But why, there's a deadline for all bills to move from their first to second chamber by, oh, well, maybe the deadline is just to have a work session in their first chamber.
Yeah, exactly. It's not to move to the other side. The rule, and again, rules get special rules.
I think that's it. So yeah, I think we've maybe been might have misrepresented that to the group even. I was thinking they had to move from one chamber to the other, and the joint committees did that. You know, Joint Ways and Means does that for everything else. But yeah, it's just to have a work session. So
This
it
is
did.
sort of reminding me of Calvin Ball. Do people know what Calvin Ball is? In
Calvin and Hobbes.
Yeah, Calvin in a bit, but he just changes the rules whenever he wants. All right, well, this is very helpful. I think this is one of those moments where I'm like, this is why there are trained, like, you know, highly paid trained lobbyists who just do that because they're trying to keep track.
I do think there is something to be said on HB 3124 and the fact that it's still alive. There is still some components in there that are the disaster resilience for underserved farmers, the funding for food hubs and farmers markets. And I don't know, talk to Alice, and Shin provided testimony from OCFSN. We submitted written testimony from OCFSN in support of those components, but I don't think anyone's really tracking that next phase of like the budget on that. And what
I am.
you are. So how, and seeing if there's a way to, I listened into that hearing in the very end of it, where Helm's like, go out there and fight for this bill because of the tight budgeting. Like, how can we, use the network as a way to help like show the importance of those pieces, or just trying to think about the next step with that and not losing that piece.
Is FOF formally accepted the role of lead advocate for that one? I'm not sure. Okay.
I'm not sure. I don't think there is a formal lead advocate from what I've heard.
I think Alice has kind of said, I think Alice is kind of taking the lead on advocating for that, but I think she made that ask to Rep. Helm, but the answer is all of the things that we just said, all of the different ways that basically it would be a message that says, fund the drought package with these provisions. And that message would go to any legislator that will listen.
On Ways and Means? Or is it any? Because we kind of missed the deadline, right? For those top 3 priorities.
No, we didn't.
Oh, okay.
It was in there for Rep. Helm, put it on his list. And I think Rep. Owens probably put it on his list.
Okay.
But it's just a strategic advocacy to Ways and Means Committee. But simultaneously, any legislator can ask Ways and Means to prioritize it. But yeah, Ways and Means is where we are now, and it's in-house rules, so that's tricky because We don't know when it will go to Ways and Means. It's not in Ways and Means, and the other bills are. So I don't know the answer to that question. Actually, that's a very good question. I mean, if we were to say Ways and Means fund this, they'd say it's not even in Ways and Means.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
But they recognize it as a huge budget request. And behind the scenes, Helm and Owens are advocating hard for carving out a little pot for drought. And what we have to do is demonstrate that it's a high priority compared to all the other priorities in the drought package, because it's actually not about funding the drought package. He's saying you all are going to have to fight amongst yourselves a bit, because everything's not going to end up in that package in the end.
It's going to get cut down. Yeah, that makes sense.
And they have
So,
to see it
Andrew-
as a really high priority.
Yeah, often at this point in the game, it's getting a legislator. You're like, you have to play the game of like, which legislator knows which legislator and who are buddies and who can they exert influence on. So it's like getting a legislator. It's getting one of the members to make the asks to move something out of committee or to fund it. But that's kind of how you play that game. And it's also going to come down to like all the deals that are going to start getting cut, because indeed there's not enough money for everything. So it's like whose voice is louder, I mean, a lot of people just end up, collateral damage in budget in deals that get made. People make good deals, they make bad deals, and people get hurt by those deals all the time, but it's a total part of the session. So it's just kind of like a big end of session disaster, and who knows what'll happen.
Free for all. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, find a legislator who's popular, powerful, has power, and you get them to say what you want.
I'll follow up with Alice. I think she's going to be the lead on this. It makes sense. I think, thanks for bringing that up, Megan.
And
Or
she
we
has a
will.
lobbyist. I mean, they have a lobbyist, so that lobbyist will be able to advise them.
Yeah.
I don't know if Alice will use that lobbyist for that campaign.
We'll talk to Alice.
I think she mentioned she should have them keep an eye on that as well.
One thing to be aware of, this is just to be real transparent, we're in a situation where ORCAM's advocating for funding for the Healthy Soils Bill in the drought package as well. And we're supportive of that with CFSN Disaster Relief Fund, but we're, that's all I guess I want to say, just that we're going to have to navigate different, we're all advocating for funding from that same pool. And that's where I think it has been helpful in the past to have some of that aligned work that we haven't heard anything about on this committee that I'm aware of around kind of food systems advocacy in a coordinated way, so that we're not competing with each other, which we're just entering into that time of the session where we're not technically competing with each other, because we're not going to say don't fund these other things, but we're all asking for money and there's hardly any available.
And
So-
everybody's got a priority. Like, yeah.
So let me throw out this idea, and we're near to the end of our hour, but let me throw out this idea. If this is the right time, it sounds like it is, could we actually say, okay, we're in the final stretch, we're in budgeting. We know there's a lot of budget asks out there across the network, and we're wondering what opportunities we have to put it all out on the table. I mean, this is about diversifying our asks, right? So we have to think of this as a whole system, and certainly things that are related to soils and agricultural production and climate, they might come from different directions, but they're sort of in the same space. And things like food for all Oregonians and double up food bucks, that goes in a different direction, but like, maybe we need to create a space where we can look at this so that I'm not saying that you can put a bow around it and say, well, everyone's going to be fine, or here we know the trade-offs. But I think if we're going to have a food systems focus, it's going to be advocates for different parts of the food system coming together and like being open about it. I mean, like the group that a couple years ago did that logo letter.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Yeah.
And so we could do that. But it's also going to require like everyone in this committee, everyone who's advocating for different bills, to be willing to kind of show up and say, this is what this is how we want to advocate. And what's the product? Is the product that everybody just knows we're going after that and we'll remain friends afterwards? Or is the product an actual letter? And who would that letter go to and what would it affect be? I mean, I'm just asking, like, what is the move?
Yeah, I don't know what the move is. I think it's tricky because each organization has its priorities and has authority only from its leadership to advocate for those priorities and not necessarily advocate for other priorities. But we're part of this community, and simultaneously, we're also really well, thanks to the good work of the network, we're really well connected to each other. And so, for example, everybody in OCFSN that is supportive of the Healthy Soils Bill is signed on as an endorsing org. So we've already got almost all the Farming for the Future groups pretty much have endorsed the Healthy Soils Bill and some of the Natural Climate Solutions Bill. And so we're doing that work as coalitions, but so I think it might be happening just in the fact that we're connected to each other. But, and I don't know, it would be quite a process to navigate that right now.
Let me ask you this. When I go into bills to watch, it's possible that we could ask Eric to go into bills to watch and figure out what the budget ask is for every single bill or budget that's in that bills to watch. Eric is really good at math, and just put it together. Right. And I think even just seeing it, because we don't see any of that in bills to watch.
Oh, yeah, we need the dollar amounts in there. Yeah.
Right. And so I think that would be really great just to start with, not even necessarily starting, you could go in there, but then to see all the dollar amounts and all the bills on a piece of paper for us all to know, okay, and then what are we dealing with here? Here was the big budget. This is how much is left. Like, what's the playing field here for everyone to know, like, there are going to be these trade-offs going in. So I'm not even saying it'll change behavior, but I think this is an important thing for us all to realize, since people are doing this collaborative work together, and not everyone knows that's happening, Megan, though you just described. So it's like awareness. I mean, let's start with that.
So I think the matrix is the place to do it.
People aren't really using the matrix. We could do the math there. I think it's a great idea to put it all in there because it's Excel and then we really can do the math easily, but we'll build on the matrix.
It's in there already in column M.
Is it all in there? Is it up to date?
I don't think so.
Right. So in our last few minutes here, what is the best way for Eric to find updated budget information for all the bills that are in bills to watch? I mean, first of all, we have to figure out which of those are all still alive. If they're all still alive, what's the accurate budget ask? How do we figure that out?
Ask that lead advocate, because there's a fiscal impact. I mean, you could look at the fiscal impact statement.
Okay.
But you'd have to be able to read one, and I'm sure that they're all easily interpretable, but you could try the fiscal impact statement, and then if that's not clear, ask the lead advocate.
Yep.
Some of them are just policy, like some of FOF's bills don't have any fiscal impact.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll work on getting that information and see what it means when we get there. And does anyone have a rough idea of how much money is in play?
I've heard, but we won't know until after the May 19th, May revenue forecast.
And the May revenue forecast will be the overall revenue, and people will do the math about how much has already been committed.
Yeah, it's not, I don't think legislators are rattling off numbers like this is how much is left over after but
no, it's ridiculous. And plus there's so much else that goes into the state budget that we can't even imagine. So I think it would be helpful even just to have, I don't know how much people are going to use the information, but to be able to say later, OCFSN members we're advocating for, $27 million in funding for food systems work. Yep. And in the end, we got 10 of it, or we got all of it. We got all of it, plus some extra. Yep. Yep. Just nice. Being nice. Okay. Great. Well, I'm glad that is like, we started budget advocacy and we came down to budget understanding. So I think we managed to talk about all of the bills you guys are watching, that you all are watching. I hope that folks who didn't attend today will somehow figure out what's going on with theirs. That would be nice to know. That's another thing, Eric, we might have you just do some outreach about to find out. Great. Okay. Well, thanks, everyone. That was really good.
Great.
To see everybody.
We should move that column over, that money column over, since now it's the one that matters, almost the only one that matters. Let's move it over to closer to the status column.
I'll put that here.
Okay, thanks all.
Bye.
Bye.
Put the